Filmmaking at any level costs money, but it doesn't have to cost millions. The size of your ideas is almost always going to be bigger than the size of your wallet. But today, there are more creative solutions to the dreaded budget problem than ever. In this series, we look at how you can most effectively make a small-scale movie with large-scale ambitions. This is Low Budget Filmmaking, Episode 2 Production.
Scrappiness begin.
They're making a mockery out of my words, man. This whole thing is turning into a theatrical mockery. You understand that, Mike? No? Well, you will.
The production stage of low-budget filmmaking has many similarities to the production stage at any level. The goal is the same: to capture all the footage necessary to make your film. There are some key differences, however. Production always moves faster than a filmmaker would like. But on low-budget projects, production typically moves even faster. Time is money. And if you don't have a lot of money, you don't have a lot of time. The key for successful low-budget production, then, is to be prepared to milk every day for all it's worth. Robert Rodriguez puts it simply.
If you want to make a movie for a really low budget, you can't spend on anything. You have to refuse to spend. I mean, that's just basically how you do it. You refuse to spend on anything.
Because time and resources are scarce, production is all about finding efficiencies without sacrificing the final product. One of the key areas where these kinds of efficiencies can be found are in locations. Finding the right location for any movie is paramount. Yet on small-scale projects, it's even more important. It is vital to find a location that does work for you. Often, this means that a location already has the perfect look without requiring much set dressing. In other words, low-budget films, especially ones with multiple locations, typically shoot on location rather than building multiple elaborate sets. This, of course, saves money, but it also can add to the authenticity of the movie.
I say show yourself, spirit!
Sean Baker explains his thoughts on a particularly recognizable location in Tangerine.
I always knew that Donut Time had to be a part of it. It's iconic. It was the hub that many of these girls used at night for shelter. We didn't want to fake this at a donut shop on the other side of town. I actually told my producers, if we don't get Donut Time, I'm not interested in making the film.
I'm not doing this. I'm out of here, because you know, I told you. I already told you.
But shooting on location doesn't necessarily mean shooting for free. Typically, a location permit is required, especially when shooting in a heavily trafficked area, a well-known monument, or in a city with lots of productions like New York or LA. For more on film permitting, check out our video on the subject.
We don't have a permit. Run!
If your production is small enough, it is possible to shoot guerrilla style without permits. This can save money, but it should be noted that it can open up a set to multiple liabilities, like fines and legal action.
Hey, hon, we're over here by the castle. Just wondering where you are. Call me when you get this, okay?
Where's Daddy?
I don't know. Let's go find him, okay?
Calling card of many low-budget films is a limited amount of locations. This limits the amount of time spent on company moves, makes logistics simpler, and yes, keeps costs down. Sam Raimi, for example, designed The Evil Dead to take place largely in one cabin, which required patience, ingenuity, and some elbow grease to get it right.
Take forward sound 367. 90% of the picture takes place in the cabin, so we finally did find a place. It was an old place in this little valley surrounded by miles of woods near Morristown, Tennessee. This area had been used as grazing land. In fact, these cows and cattle had knocked down the door of this place, and there was about 6 inches of cow dung. The cameraman and the production assistants and everyone was shoveling out cow dung for a week, and we ripped out walls, tore out the ceiling, made a studio out of the place.
As Raimi's story attests, sometimes a location isn't perfect upon arrival. The key, then, is to decorate it as smartly and cheaply as possible. During the shoot for Halloween, John Carpenter and his team needed to simulate that it was autumn, so they used artificial leaves to sprinkle on lawns for the outdoor scenes. To save money, they would reuse these leaves from location to location, taking the time to clean them up and transport them. Productions can also save money through equipment choices. Equipment can easily become the most expensive element of a low-budget film's production. Cast and crew may be friends working for little or no money, and the location may be a family friend's house, but equipment is harder to cut corners on.
Right there, I got the perfect blankets, man. I just found them. That camera will be silent.
It doesn't mean equipment needs to balloon your budget, however. Before trying to source all the most state-of-the-art bells and whistles for your project, take the time to do research into what you actually need to tell your story. Do you need to shoot on an airy, or do you just want to?
You write women well.
You think so?
Yeah, they're not hothouse flowers.
Thank you.
This means having in-depth conversations with your director of photography, and often your gaffer as well. Describe your vision, and get a sense from them what will be possible with what equipment. Today, saving money on equipment doesn't necessarily mean creating a low-budget looking final product. Gareth Edwards, for example, shot his sci-fi epic on a Sony FX3, a prosumer camera that cost less than $4,000. The FX3's low cost allowed him to have several on standby on set, making for quicker setup times. Shooting on a cheaper camera can be creatively desirable. Steven Soderbergh explains his reasoning for shooting Unsane on an iPhone.
It was really a creative choice. Like, it wasn't a budgetary issue. I could have shot it on anything. I felt like this movie would be well served by my ability to put a lens anywhere I wanted in a matter of seconds.
Do you think you'd be proud of you? How you've turned out?
If you do feel like a higher-end camera is necessary for your production, there are still ways to cut costs. First, reach out to rental houses with a one-pager describing your film and why it would be exciting for them to be involved. If you're transparent about your budget, many houses will be willing to work with you or at least meet you halfway. Second, reach out to your network. Maybe videographers have their own gear, and if they're a friend, may be able to give you a better deal than a traditional route. Or you can get more creative, like John Waters.
Have that big, heavy 16mm camera with a brace that weighed a ton. They didn't have video then or anything. That was the kind of camera they used to make the news. And so I paid this guy that paid cameramen from the TV stations to illegally take the cameras out a weekend and bring it to me.
Patient. Another time, another story.
Lens choices, too, should be economical. Robert Rodriguez explains why he used a zoom lens for El Mariachi. This
is how you get 5 shots in one take. Basically, I shoot his first line of dialogue here in the wide, then I zoom in for his second line, which is a little more threatening, zoom back out to get this wide shot of the guitar case going up. And I'm doing this because I wanted to make it look like I've shot this all day with different lens sizes.
Lights are also a large budgetary consideration and are affected by the camera you choose. If you have a camera that shoots well in low light, like a Sony Venice for example, you may not have to spend as much on lights for night shoots. Whereas, if you're shooting on film, you'll likely need to spend more on more powerful lights. There are always creative ways to get around lighting limitations. Halloween took this scrappiness to the next level. Producer and co-writer Deborah Hill describes the lighting approach in the film's
While we were up there shooting that scene, downstairs all the electricians and grips were running around crazy trying to reset the lights for when we turned around and came back through the house.
Of course, all of these equipment choices will heavily affect your film's cinematography. There is no one way to pull off great low-budget cinematography, but often it uses its monetary limitations as creative fodder, not compromise. And typically, it starts with extensive planning. With limited time on set, a director and their DP will likely want to have detailed shot lists, so they aren't wasting time deciding on coverage during the shoot. When shot listing, economy is key. The fewer setups, the better. So decide which shots are absolutely necessary, and mark the ones that you only want, so that you can cut them on set if need be. You can even decide which shots you want to prioritize as the most impressive. Christopher Nolan describes his approach in following.
But I wanted to have the first scene be a very controlled, competently made piece of filmmaking, so that when you see the rest of the film is all a Bolex, not even on the shoulder, because you can't put it on the shoulder, but bouncing around and walking around the streets and following people and all of that, that it would be clear that that were deliberate.
You can also use equipment limitations to your advantage. For the creator, Edwards and his team leaned in the lightweight nature of the FX3 and shot much of the film in long, handheld takes. As for lighting, arguably the most effective way to light a scene with limited resources is by using natural light. Naturalistic lighting can have stunning, professional-looking final results, as can be seen in movies like The Rider. Though using natural light doesn't mean you have to have naturalistic lighting. Nolan describes how he created stylized visuals for following.
So I would take a basic lighted kit with 3 redheads. On a big day, we'd have a blonde in a case. We'd light the whole set with 3 or 4 lights and do it very quickly. We'd look at the natural lighting, the situation we were in, and then you'd try and just enhance that or exaggerate that to the degree you needed to get the correct exposure as the actors move around the room. But if you look at following with a mind to this, you'll see that everybody basically stands by the windows the whole time.
With the bare necessity of equipment, time, and personnel, low-budget production is no walk in the park. But it's far from impossible. It just takes some determination. And if you're feeling determined, get started with Studiovity's pre-production software. For our next episode, we'll see how a film gets finished, on budget, in post-production. Until then, remember, you've got to start somewhere.